we shall see. So, okay, moving on to the next game that was in week 7. This one is a little bit more heartbreaking to talk about. This is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They beat the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. This was on Thursday Night Football. Now, listen, Drew and I may be a little biased to Derek Carr for obvious reasons. Former Oakland/Las Vegas Raider quarterback, was with us for 9 years. Obviously, that's our team. So for all intents and purposes, we were and are still huge Carr supporters, and clearly say still because obviously we're rooting for him. We don't want him to not succeed. And also he's from Fresno State. We want to make sure that our guys from Fresno State succeed and do really, really well in the next level. And Drew and I believe that he has succeeded in the 9 years that he was with the Raiders. Some people may say otherwise. Other people say he has. For the most part, he's found success. I would say a couple of things that in his time with the Raiders, he's never had a really good defense to rely on. He's had an O-line that was really reliable for like maybe 3 out of his 9 seasons. For the most part, though, it wasn't the greatest offensive line. Last season with Josh McDaniels, with Derek Carr, a lot of turmoil. So him with the Saints now, you would think upgrade at weapons at some capacity, or not really upgrade, but younger weapons, familiar with the coach that's there with Dennis Allen, defense arguably within the top 10, which Derek Carr's never had. And you play in a super weak division and you have a top 5 running back that's happening right now. And yet in Thursday Night Football, we saw a side of Derek Carr that I don't think we see very often, where he completely let his emotions get the better of him. Obviously, there's that infamous play where Chris Olave is running some sort of route. Don't care what type of route it was. And then Derek Carr throws it out of bounds, potentially out of the play, frustrated with Olave for, I guess, running the wrong route or whatever the case may be, and showing a side of emotion that even when I remember when John Gruden was taking over for the Raiders, there were some times where Derek Carr would express frustration to John Gruden for a couple of seasons when John Gruden and Derek Carr were getting familiar with each other. But then towards the latter part of John Gruden's time there, and this is honestly the season where the Raiders were actually somewhat successful until the whole Henry Ruggs and John Gruden situation happened. Didn't really see that very much, and he looked a lot more mature. Derek Carr did in that circumstance. This season, though, it's a bit of a different story. Clearly was frustrated with, I don't know if it was the play calling of his OC. Clearly he was upset with Chris Olave. There's just a lot of things going on with him that night where he was expressing frustration. And I was seeing that and I was kind of thinking, man, that's not a great look. And I'm only giving my perspective. I don't know what Drew's thoughts were about Derek Carr and the whole thing. I don't know if he'll see some justification in it or see a different point of view from it, but I'm just going to give you what my thoughts was of it. What makes this tough for me, seeing this from Derek Carr, is Derek Carr is upset about things that probably he had a huge part in, but is not really acknowledging. Now, in his press conference at the end of the game, he recognized that he was out of line with his emotions. Now, granted, football is an emotional sport. It's got to happen. You're going to have flare-ups. You're going to be upset. But I think what made this a little bit different is normally Derek Carr is about motivating, getting his guys involved, keeping them in the game of it, and coaching them up, I guess, in some sense. And this didn't look like that. It looked like, I don't want to say a teardown, but whatever is next to teardown, it didn't look like he was being a great teammate. They've probably talked about this and squashed this by now, but he wasn't looking like a great leader at this. A lot of finger pointing. Not what I'm used to seeing from Derek Carr in the time that I've seen him. Also, just watching the game, didn't look great. He was escaping the pocket when he probably shouldn't have. Off-balance throws, underthrows, which granted, Derek Carr probably underthrows it for certain reasons. Maybe because it gives his receiver an opportunity to go back to it, maybe draws a PI, whatever the case may be. But almost inadvertent, where there's an opening, he missed it. And it's not great. There were some parts of it that looks like that. I don't want to say Derek Carr is the problem, but at least he's not helping the solution. And again, I don't know, maybe, of course, it's his first year with this team. They're getting to know him. He's getting to know the team, and everybody else is trying to gel together. It just wasn't a great look. And it's hard because as Derek Carr fans, we want him to succeed, but when people are saying that he looks like he's the one holding them back, and it's kind of apparent, now granted, this was back-to-back games where he threw like over 350 yards or something like that. Stats can sometimes be misleading. Like how it doesn't really say how many missed opportunities Carr was late on. Like, how many overthrows did he have? Now, granted, there's a completion and an attempts stat that kind of tells you somewhat of the story, but you have to dig a little deeper to see, like, okay, how badly did he miss these guys? How many times was the ball not placed accurately that some of these receivers missed? I think that's a pretty important question to ask. And if I have to be completely objective, and again, as a Derek Carr fan, someone that wants to see him succeed, as I've mentioned, I also have to be super objective and kind of see things the way they are. He doesn't look great. I want him to get better. I want him to be able to get through this. I want this team to kind of get through this because no offense to anybody, but I did pick the Saints to kind of come out of the South. And right now the Falcons, which is weird, look like the best team that's there. And then maybe the Bucs look better than the Saints right now. But I would argue that the Saints have the better roster, but they're not gelling. Like when Baker Mayfield looks like the better quarterback than you, it's hard to miss. And I'm not saying that Baker Mayfield is a scrub. I'm not saying that he can't play, clearly number 1 overall pick, but I also believe that Derek Carr could be up there with some other quarterbacks. Like, there was an argument where he was probably within the top 12 to 10 of quarterbacks in the league. And now he's not. He's in the bottom tier of that for sure. And I have no defense for that other than, I hope that they get through this. I hope it's learning pains, but, Dennis Allen also isn't the greatest offensive minded coach. Drew made that point early on in the season where he's nervous about Dennis Allen. Maybe that plays in a part with Derek Carr, but Dennis Allen, I don't see how he would get Derek Carr to have this type of emotion to the point to where it is demeaning, it looks like, unmotivating, definitely not a team leader type of stuff. So we'll see. We'll see how the Saints respond. I do have them as one of the teams as well on here for the second half of the show, but I just wanted to point that out for just all intents purposes of being objective regarding Derek Carr. The Jags ultimately won that game against the Saints. Saints did not look great. And again, Derek Carr kind of looked like the reason why they weren't the greatest. Was he the sole problem? No. But like I said, he definitely wasn't a big solution to that. He kind of was feeding into the reasoning why they couldn't get over that deficit and win that game. So